Hello and welcome to the Anita Posch Show, the best Bitcoin podcast in town. My guest today is Christian Decker. He's a researcher and developer at Blockstream. We're going to talk about the Lightning Network, their new project called Greenlight, and I'll ask him about Blockstream's plans for the future. Before that, a short word about my new book and a message from my sponsors. Enjoy. Did you know that last year more than 14 million trades were made with gift cards on Paxful? That's 14 million discounts that were given in exchange for Bitcoin through regular entrepreneurs like you and me. Through these trades, entrepreneurs can make a profit. At the same time, they help unbanked people around the globe send money back home or access the global economy. And international business with Bitcoin is possible for everyone, and Paxful truly believes it. Find out how entrepreneurs around the world have been changing their lives with Bitcoin and Paxful.com by checking out this link, anita.link/Paxful. That's anita.link/Paxful.
Learn Bitcoin will teach you the why and how to use Bitcoin. It's no simple task to explain Bitcoin. Anita's angle of attack is holistic, synthetic, and clear. Thomas Voetlin, founder and CEO Electrum. Order your copy now at learnbitcoin.link. That's learnbitcoin.link.
Living on crypto is easier than you think with Bitrefill. Choose from over 4,000 gift cards and mobile top-up options from around the world. I used Bitrefill to top up my phone when I was visiting Zimbabwe. It was easy, worked like a charm, and I even earned sats back. Pay with Bitcoin, Lightning, Ethereum, Dash, Tether over Tron, and many more options. No account is necessary. Join the thousands of users around the world who are living on crypto today using Bitrefill. Join now at bitrefill.com and start earning sats back with each purchase. That's bitrefill.com. Hello, Christian. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
It's great to have you on again. We met 2019, I think, and did a German interview, but it's the first time in English.
Oh, that's been forever ago.
Yeah, that's true. In Bitcoin times, that's really forever. So, as always, I would like to start with a little introduction. So please introduce yourself to our listeners. Who are you? What are you doing? And then I'm going to ask you a little bit about your background. I mean, when you came into the Bitcoin space and things like that.
Yes, so I'm Chris. I am a software engineer at Blockstream, and I work on the Lightning Network. And I've been in the space like forever. So yeah, I've seen it all.
Yeah, I've seen something. I was on your blog, on your website, and the first post when you were writing about Bitcoin was called "Bitcoin is getting some traction," and that was in December 2010.
Yeah.
So you're really a long-time Bitcoiner. How was it to be a part of this movement in the last 11 years, and how have things changed for you?
It's been an amazing journey. I would have never guessed that I'd be sticking up with it for this long. Back when I stumbled over this inconspicuous paper in 2009, while doing my master's, it just happened to mesh with my personal interests. And later, when I had to decide on what to do my doctoral thesis, I didn't have to look too far, and all the way it's been a great community. Things have changed over the time, obviously. What started out as a really tiny and tight-knit community back in 2011, we had the first meetup here in Zurich with 4 people. Most of which I'm still in touch with, and now it's this global phenomenon, and it's gotten so big and so sprawling that I had to turn off my Google alerts for the term Bitcoin because I couldn't read everything anymore. It's been quite an adventure.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think you were the first person to write a doctoral thesis about Bitcoin. Is that right?
Yes, I beat Andrew Miller by a couple of weeks.
So globally, the first one.
Yeah.
Wow. And you're also, as a researcher, still, I guess, a lot into the academical research on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Can you tell me, I think, has the number of papers about Bitcoin grown even in the last year or months? And do you also see papers about other cryptocurrencies?
Oh yeah, this space has totally taken off. I'm still reviewing for a number of conferences, doing the peer reviews for them, and it's gotten so big that I can't even count them anymore. It used to be the case that I had an archive of all of these articles and was publishing sort of all of the abstracts and links to the various papers. And nowadays I just can't keep up anymore unless I were to restrict to a very, very tiny set of topics. And usually the way it works in academia is you try to do a greenfield project, and only then you port it back onto existing systems. That's because it's much easier to build without any limitations that existing systems might have, and only then you think about how to make them work with the existing systems, and that means that we have a lot of proposals for new systems, but all the ones that will end up having success can be ported back to Bitcoin in this case. So I'm pretty confident that we can build a lot of cool stuff on Bitcoin still.
Oh wow, that would be interesting for another podcast. Like, what are the papers you are looking into, and what do you think are the upcoming big new features and innovations? And now comparing the last Bitcoin bull run, let's say it in 2016-27 to this one, do you also feel that there's a difference?
To be perfectly honest, I don't follow price trends that much, and therefore I'm not aware of there being or not being a bull run. It's gotten when you talk about technology with people, you notice that people are much more sort of confident in the future of Bitcoin. And in its ability to recover from whatever we throw at it. A couple of years ago, it was this kind of craze and panic almost that people were, oh, what's the next Bitcoin, and oh, can we keep up, and should I sell now? And nowadays it just you basically just shrug anything off, and so that's what I noticed coming over the last couple of years. But I'm definitely not a trader. I usually start conferences by telling people that I'm the idiot who sold 100 Bitcoins for $5, and that will result in them not asking about my economic future, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's only a distraction, and I guess you're not very often on Twitter or on other news portals, so and concentrate on research and developing stuff, and that's also a great thing, because we need people who really work on that stuff and not only talk about it.
Oh, I'm a lot on Twitter. It's just that I don't. I seem to not follow the people that talk price only.
Interesting.
So yeah.
So maybe I should look if you have a list that I can follow too of these people. So, Christian, now let's talk about the growth of the Lightning Network, because I think you were one of the people who shaped or were a part of the first developments in the Lightning Network. So I can remember in 2017 when we had the block size debate, which was settled through the hard fork. many people then expressed their concerns that the Lightning Network is much too complicated, it will never work and such. I hear that less and less now, but many people in mainstream still don't know what the Lightning Network actually is. Maybe can you just explain it in simple words so that we have an intro to the Lightning Network?
Yeah, it is basically a system that allows us to compress many transactions into a very tiny footprint on the blockchain itself by basically creating a system of smart contracts that are managed by basically two endpoints. So what I usually do is I take out the example of a poker table. The two of us sit down at a poker table. We put some money on the table. Once it's on the table, neither of us can actually grab it and run away. And then we start playing, rounds of poker, and sometimes some more of that money on the table belongs to me, and sometimes I lose, and you own some more parts of that pot. And at the end of the evening, we stand up and we grab the part that belongs to us. Always checked by the other side that we're not sort of stealing their part of the money, and we leave. And the analogy here is that we putting money on the table is basically a transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain where we send Bitcoins into a 2 of 2 multisig. The table here is a 2 of 2 multisig. When we have the money on the table, we both have to agree on how to split it, and this agreement might change over time. And when we stand up and we actually want to get our money back, we agree on how we spend that money by creating a transaction that takes the money out of the pot and splits it into your share and my share. And that's another transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain. So what the Bitcoin blockchain sees is basically the creation and the settlement of this contract, of this poker table. But what it doesn't see is all the hands we played in between. So we could have played millions of poker hands in between, but the blockchain only cares about the creation and the settlement of the poker table, basically. And by doing this, we can compress all of the transactions we had in the meantime into just 2 transactions on the blockchain, making much better use of the very limited space that we have on the Bitcoin blockchain. And then there's constructions where we can extend this to have multi-hop payments where I pay you and you pay the bar for me for my coffee, for example. So that's the basic functionality of most of these constructions, and in particular, this is the construction that we use for the Lightning Network.
Mm-hmm. And it basically scales the Bitcoin, the possibilities to send more and faster transactions, let's say Bitcoin payments, Lightning payments, because we always hear this, Bitcoin can only do 7 transactions per second and Visa is much better. So, but in the end, I think with the Lightning Network, we can have even more transactions per second than Visa has. Is this true?
Absolutely. So the scale is one side of one advantage that we have with the Lightning Network. Privacy and basically immediacy of settlement are the other ones, but we can talk about those later. Quantifying the scale that the Lightning Network can give us is really hard, but the fact that we could potentially have an infinite number of transactions without ever touching the blockchain makes it a really useful tool for us to extend not just the reach of Bitcoin, because we now can process so many more transactions, but also opening up a number of new use cases. If I go to my grocery store and I want to pay with Bitcoin, I don't really want to stay there for an hour for my Bitcoin payment to be settled. When I can use Lightning, I can actually settle it in less than a second quite easily. So just to throw some numbers out there, we have 7 transactions per second for the Bitcoin blockchain. Each of these could be creating a Lightning channel, and each of these Lightning channels, with today's software, with today's unoptimized implementations, we can easily reach 500 transactions per second per channel.
Wow.
And so the network, I mean, that's of course an upper limit at the moment, but you can see where this is going. We can basically scale out by creating more channels. And so with 6 channels, we could potentially overtake Visa.
Cool. So, and I guess, is the number of nodes relevant to that? And is also the localization of the nodes, like the decentralization around the globe, is this a factor? Because, I mean, the number of Lightning nodes has grown immensely in the last months. Now, I think we have around 15,000 nodes worldwide. I always ask myself, I mean, in Africa, for instance, there are only maybe 20 or 30, or I don't know how many, but much less than in the US and in Europe. Is this a problem for Lightning payments in Africa, that there are only 20 nodes?
I should probably mention that these 15,000 number talks always about the public part of the network. The part that has opted into facilitating payments for others by providing bridges between endpoints. And so the actual number of network participants and nodes might be much, much higher. And back in 2019, when we last met, I had a slide basically showing that about 40% of the network is part of this submerged part of the iceberg. And so I don't have the current numbers, but I'd expect the number of sort of private participants that do not opt into forwarding for other people might be much, much higher. That aside, the number of nodes we have in the network represent the possible endpoints and origins for payments. And so every merchant and every user that wants to transfer a payment must operate one of these nodes. Basically, it's not like the Bitcoin network where the senders of Bitcoin transactions can basically send it into the network without themselves being a node. So you have to be an active participant in the network, and so the number of nodes is definitely an indication for adoption in this case. Why is the number in Africa so much lower than elsewhere? That is probably due to them mostly using private wallets that might run on a mobile phone, might be offline for periods at a time, and therefore might not be well suited for forwarding other payments, because these nodes have to be online while you perform a payment. Other options are that simply the prospect of being a routing node is much more well known in Western countries, Europe and America in particular. So I expect these numbers to grow if they're not already bigger than what we can actually measure and see right now.
Mm-hmm. So now I've understood something new, that, I mean, I run a full node, I run a Raspberry Blitz at home, and but I also, of course, have non-custodial Bitcoin wallets, and it never occurred to me that these are full nodes basically. But I don't route, I just receive and send my own transactions, payments. Ah, okay. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, but then, of course, you're right. Then there have to be much more nodes around already. Yeah, okay. And also, I think now we have 2,300 Bitcoin inside the Lightning Network, which is immense. I mean, when did it start? In 2017, 18, you started to build the Lightning Network?
So the paper came out in 2015. And late 2015, Rusty decided, so my colleague in Australia decided to join Blockstream and hoping to work on Bitcoin, and was told to instead work on this new crazy idea. And so 2015 he started, and shortly thereafter the Lightning Labs team was founded with. Back then, the authors of the Lightning paper, and then Asank and Perry started, and since then we basically expanded this. And I think in 2018 we opened the Blockstream store shop, which was reckless, as we like to say in the space, and we had the first sort of on-chain, the first Bitcoin mainnet transactions that were basically buying stickers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool.
So it's basically been 2018 and then on that the network has started to grow, but work has started much earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. But that means that from 2018 on, that's only 3 years. In 3 years, Bitcoin worth $100 million today have flown into the Lightning Network. I mean, that's crazy, yeah?
That's the visible part. We don't actually know how much is really in the network.
True, wow. And I think it's also important that you just mentioned your colleague Rusty Russell, but that also there are other people, independent developers and other companies like Lightning Labs, Async, and many more that you are developing and working together on the Lightning Network protocol.
Yeah.
Because there's always this thing going on that Blockstream is controlling Bitcoin in a way, yeah. But I ask you about that later. Let's go back to analyzing the Lightning Network. Do you have other metrics that people are not so much talking about that you use to evaluate the state of the Lightning Network?
Certainly, the structure of the network is something very important for us. Unlike Bitcoin, where basically every node is identical and talks and shares transactions to update their local view of what is true. In Lightning, what we have to do is since we have these relationships between two parties always, we have to somehow find a way from the sender to the recipient to transfer money. So like my example before, if I want to pay somebody that I'm not directly connected to, then I have to find one peer, a peer of mine that then has a peer of his and then has a peer of his ultimately connect to whoever I want to pay. And so we do that by, hey, I give you 1 Bitcoin if you forward 0.99 Bitcoins to that guy, and then he transfers 0.98 to that next one until we actually reach this person. If there is no such path, then we simply cannot transfer money from me to whoever I want to pay. And so this is the topology of the network, the structure of the network, where we need to make sure that between any two endpoints there is actually a direct or indirect connection through intermediaries that with enough capacity, with enough funds in their channels, such that we can actually reach them with the desired amount. So that's definitely an important metric. The denser the network, the more resilient it gets to single channels not being available or nodes going offline. And so the denser we have the network, the more stable the network becomes, and the more options we have to reach our destinations. One thing that is often overlooked is that we can split payments across multiple paths, and so the denser the network, the more diversity we have in these paths, the more private all our transfer is as well, because I'm not telling you, hey, my total amount is 10 bitcoins. Here, take 10. But I'm telling you, oh, please transfer 0.5 bitcoins to that guy, and I'll be arranging some other paths for the remainder. And so there's also a privacy argument there. Other metrics that we might be interested in is who owns what part of the money in the channels. So in our poker table example, if you have all the chips, then I can't play anymore. I have to wait for you to lose some money to me before I can stake again, right? So if these channels might not always work in both directions equally well, because there might be an imbalance of the capacity. Other than that, I think there's very little we can actually see about the network. I have this usual slide where I explain the state of the network, and there's always the big numbers of this many nodes and this many channels, and then you come to number of transactions performed ? Because unlike Bitcoin, where all of the transaction data is public and we can actually go through with a bean counter and basically count how many transactions there were and what value was transferred, in Lightning you don't see that. That is private information to the parties involved in the payment itself, and we can't really have this global data. That is sad for me, because I would like to be able to brag about huge numbers of transactions, but ultimately it's good for users because we don't have this permanent trace of them buying coffee somewhere, basically.
But still, I mean, is there not a chance for companies like Chainalysis or something to find out payments? Because as soon as we cash out, or let's say go into the Bitcoin blockchain again, then there are transactions again. But I guess everything in between is unknown.
So what they can see is basically the initial balance of how much Bitcoins did we put into the channel to open the channel. And they can see what the final split is. So when we stand up with our poker chips in hand, they can basically count them. But they don't see the individual transfers that happened in between. So the hands that we played, the transfers that we performed, are all aggregated into these two numbers. What final balance do we end up with? And untangling that is incredibly hard, if not impossible. There might be cases where we just played one or two hands, and the neighboring table also played one hand, and the amounts just happen to match, and so there is a bit of that they can infer. But busy channels that had their funds moved back and forth several times, they will just not be able to say anything about that.
Is it actually better to name, like my full node has a name, and is it better to use an anonymous name, or can I use my own? I mean...
So yeah, that was a bit fun part when we sat down in 2016 to write the specification. The first thing that we decided was, everybody's gonna have a name. Where they can put in their fun, their emojis and their moniker, and they're all also going to have a color, because we thought, wouldn't that be cool, having a world map glowing with colored dots, and everybody could point to it and say, that's mine. But ultimately, it's free for you to set your own vanity name, We don't verify any of these. So every once in a while you see a news article about George W. Bush setting up a node because somebody put the name in there, but they don't realize that it's basically self-assigned and there is no verification. It's a vanity feature. If you want to be anonymous, it probably isn't a good idea to put in your social security number. And if you want to be sort of on the map and have the bragging rights of being an operator of a big node, then yes, by all means, go ahead and put your funny name in there.
But for regular people, like for privacy reasons, it's not a good idea to put in your name or your domain or something like that, I guess. Yeah.
It's probably also it probably also doesn't matter because if you are an endpoint that is only sending or receiving bitcoins, then you probably wouldn't want to announce your channels. And if you don't have announced channels, then you can't announce your node. That's an anti-spam measure that we built in. And so if you are a non-routing node, then you can put whatever name in there. It won't show up anywhere. Your peers will actually block that announcement because they don't know what to assign it to. So end users will probably not use any of those features.
Yeah, probably enthusiasts maybe. Yeah. So. I was thinking as soon as Taproot will be activated in November, I think there will also be new possibilities for the Lightning Network. Is that right? And which are those?
That is correct.
Like what will it enable in general terms?
Yes, so there's a couple of things that are interesting for Lightning. One is the adoption of a new signature scheme called Schnorr, which allows a number of optimizations and reduces the size of transactions and hides the on-chain footprint, so to speak. The other one is another technology or another feature of Taproot, which allows us to hide basically the structure of our transactions behind what looks like a very common transaction requiring a single signature. And the third one is what we as Lightning developers can build on top of it. So let me start with the last one. The last one is also a feature that builds on top of Schnorr signatures, and it allows us to make use of the mathematical structure of these signatures in a way that allows us to create so-called PTLCs, point time lock contracts. What we have today is hash time lock contracts, and what this is a feature that enables us to create end-to-end security for our payments. So if, like I said before, if I send one Bitcoin to you, I only want to send this one Bitcoin to you if you actually forward the amount that I told you to forward to the next party. And the way this works is basically, hey, I give you this money if you can solve this mathematical puzzle for me. You don't know how to solve this mathematical puzzle, so you turn around and tell the next person in line, hey, I give you this amount of money if you can solve this mathematical puzzle. And this goes on until you reach the destination. The destination, being the one who created this puzzle, actually has the solution in hand and then can say, okay, give me my money, here's the solution. The next guy in line basically loses his money, but he gets the solution to the puzzle. He can turn around and says, hey, give me my money, here's the solution. All the way back to me, and so I in the end have sent the money, and and I got the solution for the puzzle, and I can then use that to prove that yes, indeed, I did pay, and everybody in the line was sure that they could get once they sent out their share, they could turn around and grab the promise on the incoming side. This has one issue, and namely that the puzzle is always the same along this chain. So if we have somebody who wants to observe these payments, like chain analysis, they might be in multiple places in this route and say, oh, I've seen this puzzle before, so this must be the same payment. With PTLCs, what we can change the puzzle slightly over as we forward this, and so even if an observer is present multiple times in this forwarding chain, they can actually they will not be able to say, okay, this is the same one, because it looks completely differently from what we had before. So this is a big improvement in privacy, and it allows us some more advanced features as well that I probably shouldn't go too much into detail. But stuff like sender cancelable payments and stuff like that, where we can make sure that yes, even if something gets stuck, we can still continue performing our payments because we can cancel whatever got stuck. The second part is how can we hide our on-chain traces better. That is both through Taproot, where we can say, okay, however complex our spending conditions are, we can hide them behind what looks like a single signature being required, and only when it comes to actually making use of these more advanced features, only then we have to reveal stuff, the details of our agreement. And so if everything goes well, us creating the channel and us settling the channel looks like just any other payment in the network. So what I mentioned before is I was able to extract back in 2019, I was able to extract the hidden part of the network and the public part of the network, and basically doing that by looking at the traces that channels leave on the Bitcoin blockchain. That will not be possible anymore in future, and so everything will just look like, oh, there is some person transferring some value to somebody else. They just won't have any idea of whether this is a channel or not. It will just look like any other transfer. And the final feature that we have for Schnorr signatures is that many of our messages in Lightning are signed, and sometimes are signed multiple times, especially when the way we disseminate information about the structure of the network through a mechanism called a gossip mechanism. We exchange messages that are signed by both endpoints of the channel, and so they can get quite kind of big. So you have to think about every single signature taking 64 bytes. If we have 4 signatures, then that's 256 bytes just for signatures, and that's without any of the data that we'd actually like to transfer. And Schnorr signatures have this nice feature of actually being able, we can compress them into a single signature, and so we can reduce the amount of data that we have to exchange without impinging on the security of the data that we are actually signing. Yeah, so I think those are the big features, and there is a whole slew of smaller features that are also there, and the mailing list is pretty bubbly about ideas on what we could build if only we already had activated it.
Yeah, so it's optimization, like data size optimization, and also massive privacy improvements. Yeah, which is great. Yeah. Talking about privacy improvements, what do you see are the hurdles for the adoption of Lightning? I mean, for instance, from the regulatory side, now they want, in the US, there is this proposition, or however it's called, to make everyone a broker who has a routing node. That's at last what I understand. So are you actually developing to make all these regulatory dangers invalid? I mean, so that Bitcoin and the Lightning Network will live on forever?
I'm definitely not a regulatory expert, but we will definitely put all of our efforts into making Lightning as private and as scalable and as secure as possible. If that goes against some regulatory proposals, so be it. We are not bound to a single country's regulation. And if somebody tries to crack down on what they see as money laundering or whatever excuse they might use, then it's their loss, because they are losing a huge and growing industry, and they might come to regret it, or they might not realize it. So I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah, seems so, because you also before in the beginning you said now we are shrugging that all off, that a ban might be a danger for Bitcoin, or an attack on mining or something like that. Yeah. I
think we've reached a certain size where we're forced to be reckoned with, and the fear that there might be a unilateral ban on by some countries is just not that realistic anymore, especially given the ties that we have to existing financial institutions. The amount of investment from traditional entities, it would be basically kneecapping yourself.
Yeah, but many politicians don't really know what they're talking about, I guess, and so they also don't know about the implications. And I mean, we've seen it like 20, 30 years ago with cryptography. It was basically the same. So yeah, let's hope, and great that you build stuff that basically cannot be banned.
I mean, regulation in politics is a huge random walk. People make mistakes. Sometimes they learn, sometimes they double down, but ultimately it may take some time. But we end up with a better system altogether.
Okay, Christian, let's talk a little bit about the new product or project by Blockstream. I mean, new for us, not new for you, which is called Greenlight. Is Greenlight an option that we can establish more nodes around the world more easily? What is it?
Yes, so this whole project came out of the realization that the technology behind Lightning is still pretty new, and that it is actually quite hard to get into. Not only do you have to learn about Bitcoin, but you now also have to learn about the second layer of abstractions with all the new fancy concepts like channels and balances and capacities. And we as a Bitcoin community have this terrible habit of shaming people into learning first and only then getting their hands dirty, and that's off-putting to a lot of people. So if we just want to have this tiny group of people that have the time and have the ability to dig into the technicalities before they can actually use it and get the upside of this whole effort, then the community is not going to grow all that much, and all of the ambitions of Bitcoin becoming a global currency might be a bit overblown. So the alternative to actually learning all of this is even worse. We are getting people into buying into custodial wallets, where they aren't holding their keys and where they don't have control over the stuff, but it's nice and easy because everything's handled for them. Of course, with the downside that the service might not actually have their best interests at heart or might be hacked. So what we thought was a good road in the middle between self-hosted wallets, but having to basically read 10,000 pages of manual before actually reaping any of the benefits, or going for a custodial solution, was a path in the middle where we as Greenlight, we as Blockstream, being the experts in operating Lightning nodes and having all of the knowledge of what uptime requirements are, how to back up Lightning, and what a watchtower is, for example, we would be operating the node, would export an interface that is easy for developers to get started with, and on the other side, have users hold on to their own keys at any point in time. So the way it works is basically users have a remote control interface to a node that is running on our infrastructure, that is set up as securely and as highly available as we can. And whenever they perform any action that requires sign-off from the Bitcoin private keys, we would then forward this sign-off request to the signer in the hands of the user, and they would then independently verify and sign off on these changes to make sure that this movement is actually what they intended to do. So this is a platform where we hope to onboard new people that might not have heard about these technologies, might not have the time yet to learn, or they just want to dip their toes into using Lightning Network. Once they have seen the upside of using Lightning and using Bitcoin, then is the time to actually educate them and give them all of the information that they need to become more self-sovereign participants in the network. And our hope is to eventually offboard them into a self-hosted version where they take on more and more responsibility of their own infrastructure and become this ideal Lightning user that knows how to run all of this. But basically, by putting the benefits in front of the large time investment to learn, we think this is a much better way of educating people. We also call this onboarding to offboard, because we make onboarding easy, expose them to the educational material that we have at hand, and then we encourage them to take on more responsibility for them, their families, and their friends, basically.
Mm-hmm. So you say not your keys, not your coins, so I get my own seed. But what's the device I use? Do I have a Greenlight wallet on my phone, or how does this work?
So there's basically two parts to anything to any Greenlight node that run on the user side. We have the signer, which for now is just a piece of software that connects to Greenlight, waits for the node to be started, and reacts to whatever needs to be signed off and verifies locally that everything is going all right. This could be part of your wallet. This could be part of your browser. This could be running on a Raspberry Pi somewhere. And then we have the user interfaces, which can be combined with a signer, or they could be independent. And this could be a browser extension, creating an integration with the browser. So if you want to buy something on Amazon, you basically click a button and the payment is performed. Or it could be a mobile app on your mobile phone, or it could be your tablet, or a standalone application somewhere, or it could be running in a website using WebAssembly. So you can basically use whatever interface you want to interact with the node, and you can use whatever you want to sign off on actions performed by the node. The important part here is that since this is a single node that you remote into, you can use as many as you want as well. So no longer do you have to split your funds by having one wallet on your phone, and then you notice, I wanted to pay these $10, but now I only have like $9.50. I have to call home to send me some on my phone because I had to run multiple nodes. By having a single node that backs all of your wallets, you forego the additional management that you'd have to open channels, close channels, rebalance channels. You don't have to split your funds among many different wallets, and you have access to all of your funds from any of these front ends, which is also much easier for people to grok, because, try to explain that your phone now has 15% of your funds and 85 are somewhere else. So we think it's a much more natural way of thinking about this.
I understand exactly what you're talking about, because whenever I receive a Lightning payment, I have to look into my 3 or 4 wallets. Where do I have a channel with enough liquidity or incoming liquidity and things like that? But that sounds so comfortable to me that I would not know why I should offboard then again, because these features are not working yet on the full nodes that are around. So why would I offboard?
So ultimately, we want to show you what an ideal world could look like by onboarding you onto Greenlight, and at the same time, we will give you the components that make up Greenlight to reproduce this on your own system. So the vast majority of parts that we are building for Greenlight, the network interface, the plugins that we use to automate some stuff, and some parts of the Sea Lightning projects that we customized, we want to eventually open source them such that you can recreate something that is very, very similar to Greenlight, with more uptime, for example, on your Raspberry Pi. The way we scale out on Greenlight is basically that if you don't have any of your interfaces open, and we couldn't sign off on any changes anyway, there's no point in us keeping your node running. So after 5 minutes of inactivity, we will shut it down. It will start up in a quarter of a second again once you need it. But during the times of where you're offline, we have to do a lot of additional work for you to actually reach out to you and receive payments, for example. If you host that on your own node, you are not bound to these limitations, and so we will make sure that there are a couple of nice things you get if you actually upgrade your experience and become self-sovereign. And this uptime is one of the tidbits that we want to give you. In addition, by us publishing these parts, that the components that make up Greenlight, we should eventually be able to make sure that whatever interfaces you have been using before taking care of your own node will also continue to work once you make it your own. And so there is literally very little cost in you taking charge of your own node. It boils down to buying a $15 Raspberry Pi and some time investment, which is often overlooked. But and once you have it, you will continue to have the same user experience as you had with Greenlight. Only now you have to take care of some additional maintenance, like backups and uptime requirements that we might have.
Okay, interesting. So I guess it will also then be included in such bundles like the Raspberry Blitz or other full node software bundles.
I certainly hope so.
That depends on the maintainers, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can do we can do nothing more than putting all of these tools out there and making them available, and helping people adopt them and explaining how they could be reconstituted. But if developers do not choose to adopt them, that's perfectly fine. That's their choice. And speaking of developers, so that's sort of the second audience that we have. For now, it's been very hard for developers of applications and wallets. It's been very hard for them to actually get into developing on top of Lightning, because the usual way of doing things so far have been to actually bundle the node itself with your software. And all of a sudden, you have to be an expert at operating Lightning nodes as well. Because, well, if you deploy your mobile phone app with an integrated Lightning node, then you have to know how to manage channels, how to rebalance. You have to know about backup requirements. You have to know about uptime requirements, and all of these have prevented a lot of developers that might otherwise contribute to the Lightning ecosystem from actually participating and helping us make it more accessible to users. And our hope is, by us taking care of what we do best, managing nodes, we can free these app developers to do what they do best, optimizing user experience, optimizing interfaces, and making things more accessible.
So is it then also possible, I guess one would have an API then to also include like online payments from online shops and things like that? Or will this not be a part of Greenlight?
Absolutely. I mean, what you basically get right now is you get a stock C Lightning node that is there on demand whenever you need it. You can integrate with it however you want. Like I said, if you want to create a browser extension that basically grabs these payment requests from Amazon or whatever, and presents you with an interface where you can sign off on the transfer being done, that's perfectly possible. We can replicate the current user experience of scanning QR codes. We have some people working on NFC type payments where you tap your phone onto a point of sale. So all of these user experiences are definitely possible. We just need people to actually implement them and try them out and see what works and what sticks.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so I've read that Sphinx Chat and LastBit Striga are your first partners. Are those kind of the partners or developers that you said before that then can or should build on top of Lightning?
Yes. So we announced Greenlight a couple of weeks ago. Currently it's a closed beta. Simply because we want to slowly scale up and fix any issues that we might encounter before onboarding the next cohort of people. And so we go this very deliberate and maybe slow, but incremental rollout where we try to improve as we go and test out while we go. So people, once they get onto it, have the best experience they can. LastBit and Sphinx Chat were two very early contacts that we had. They have very different use cases. Sphinx Chat obviously being podcast streaming and sort of peer-to-peer payments, and LastBit basically being an online wallet that runs in a browser. We thought they represented a nice spectrum of possible integrations, and so we chose to basically announce with them because they show the potential of what we can do, the breadth of the things that we can do. We are currently working with a number of other teams to bring more diverse use cases into the fold. And we will announce them as we develop them and as we onboard them. But currently we have way more interested parties than we have actually capacity to assist them in developing their apps, and so it's been a bit frustrating to have to turn so many people away, but we promise that eventually this will all be public, and everybody will get their turn at trying to play with it. But we want to make this a successful deployment where everybody has the best time they could have.
Great, sounds great, and very promising. And last question to Greenlight. What's the trust model behind it? Because you said I get my keys, but then it's in between custodial and non-custodial. So what might happen in the worst case?
So you don't get your keys. You generate them on your devices. We never see them at all.
Oh, I tried Striga and I immediately saw my seed and had to write it down. I mean, I couldn't proceed from there because it was too complicated, but yeah.
So Striga is a bit of a special case. They basically run the signer on their server, but we as Greenlight don't see it. They chose to do it this way because it is a testnet wallet. We would never ever do that for a mainnet wallet. And the signer software doesn't currently run in a browser. So they had to sort of find the middle ground there. But we are working on the signer being available in the browser itself as well. And so once that is complete, then no party will ever see your keys other than yourself. So our model currently is you generate the seed, the key on your side. We never see it. You register with this key on your server. All we see is a public node. When you connect to your node, whenever you send a command to the node, it is being signed by one of the certificates that you yourself generated and are authenticated, and they authorize this action. And this action is then passed down to the signer, and the signer can say, okay, yes, this is signed by Anita's iPad. This is a device that is allowed to perform this action, and only then will it look, okay, what's the effect of this action onto my node, and is this plausible that I am signing a withdrawal transaction, for example, if Anita's iPad instructed me to withdraw some funds on chain. If yes, then I will sign it. If not, I will just reject the signature request, and the node can basically is going to get killed. So we as operators cannot initiate anything that touches your funds. A hacker that could take over our infrastructure can never initiate anything like withdrawing, and all we do see is some information about your channels, and we are actively working on reducing that as well. So we're thinking about encrypting invoices such that we as operators can't see them anymore. We are thinking about implementing something we call oblivious send, where we don't even see where a payment is going to anymore, because all of the instructions to perform the payment are managed and steered by your phone, for example. And we have loads of cool ideas on how to improve the security and privacy here. Some of which are implemented, some of which aren't just yet. But I think you'll find the trade-offs that we offer, because you will always have the choice of what to do, are quite attractive.
Okay, great.
We won't quite get to a self-managed node, but that's where we want to push you to. So
exactly, that was not the goal. So yeah, and I think these bridge technologies are very important. It's like a little bit. It reminds me a little bit about Strike, which is basically also bridging the gap, the technology gap between traditional banking and Lightning and traditional banking. But many people criticize it because of KYC and whatever. But I think it's a demonstration what is possible. Yeah.
absolutely, it's all about enabling a movement between different systems, enabling compatibility between these systems, and sure, at some points we have to take trade-offs, but we can always encourage people to take charge of their own privacy and their own security, and I think that should be the goal. Like I said, onboarding to offboard here.
Exactly. I mean, it's one of the attacks on Bitcoin all the time by, I mean, your favorite altcoin here. Any altcoin is saying we are better than Bitcoin because we are faster and cheaper and whatever. But I think there are lots of downsides or other trade-offs they have then. And most people don't understand them. I mean, from your research side or academic side, why did you choose to work in Bitcoin and why don't you work on Ethereum or Cardano or whatever?
Probably two simple reasons. Bitcoin is what I grew up with, and I hate hype. So Bitcoin is basically what I got started with. Bitcoin is the system that I see the most potential with because of the people that are involved. The engineers and the researchers working on Bitcoin are all very down to earth. They don't tend to promise too much. They set very realistic goals usually, and that's an attitude that I very much like in a system. And it basically at some point is that the constraints that Bitcoin imposes on you are a challenge, yes. But it's a challenge to make things interesting. And I think that is something that other altcoins haven't quite realized just yet, is that, yes, Ethereum might be more flexible. There might be Cardano, which offers more expressiveness in their contracts. But all of the very interesting use cases we've found so far is that if you put in a bit more work, we can actually make them work on Bitcoin itself. There is absolutely no need for you to create a completely new network and a completely new token just to get these features. Usually it is that by investing the extra time to port these things back onto Bitcoin, by working around the limitations that Bitcoin has, we can end up with a system that is much more performant and much more scalable than whatever altcoins are promising. Trying not to swear here, and this apparent flexibility that altcoins usually promise to you, and the more expressive contract language and whatever, they come at a huge cost, and that cost is basically it's externalized onto the nodes running the network itself. With our very conservative approach in Bitcoin, we are enabling everybody to run, almost everybody to run a Bitcoin node nowadays. And by jumping through a couple of extra hoops, we can still get all of these features. And so I see the limitations, or the apparent limitations that Bitcoin might have, as much more a forcing function for developers and engineers to come up with a more clever solution that in the end is also more performant. And so I usually consider altcoins to be an excellent testnet for Bitcoin, and a test bed where they can go crazy and they can invent whatever use case they want. if it makes sense and if it sees adoption, we will put in the extra hours and make it work on Bitcoin. So
yeah, I mean, it's just sad to see that many people lose their money betting on those altcoins just because they don't understand the implications and they are following the marketing language, you know. And I think for me, one of the elementary reasons why I think Bitcoin, I mean, next to many reasons, is the one that there's no leader, and we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is or was, and that's good. And all those other people, like, yeah, these are for me like the single points of failure in a way.
Yeah, it's really kind of sad that this idolization of certain people is such a huge driver, both for people cheering, but also for financial support. I hope people will eventually learn to do their own research and basically not trust whatever other people say. But I might have to rethink that desire at some point.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much, Christian. Last question. What is your vision for Bitcoin and Lightning in the next, let's say, 5 years? I guess you have an opinion on that.
I'm really bad with predictions. Like I said, I sold 100 Bitcoins for $5. My hope, however, is that we will see continued growth, incremental, maybe a bit slow growth as well. We definitely don't need a hype cycle that pulls in loads of people that then get disillusioned. I'd like to see incremental and sustainable growth, and us basically slowly improving and making things more accessible, so that we can reach more and more people who might also need this network. They just don't know it yet, or they just don't have the tools at this time, or they might not have the time to invest to actually learn about this stuff yet. And so I think it's going to be sometimes frustrating because it's a bit slow, but slow is sustainable. So that's my hope.
Exactly, yeah, and thank you for building all this inclusive technology that is going to enable people all over the world to use this neutral financial network. And it's not only a financial network, but that's another podcast episode. So thank you very much. Where can people find and follow your work?
So I'm Snyke on Twitter, SNYKE. And C. Decker almost everywhere else, GitHub, mostly GitHub. And of course IRC, the OG of communication protocols. Okay. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much too. Thanks for joining, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and please subscribe to the Anita Posch Show at anita.link/subscribe. Thanks, bye-bye.